Amazon is set to make the biggest layoffs in its history. What that says about the future of big tech jobs and why small businesses will drive the next wave of hiring. In elder care, robots that lift, clean, and coach promise relief. But do they actually save time for human caregivers? Samsung's $2,000 smart fridge now shows ads. That's right, advertisements from your fridge. Is your kitchen the next billboard? Elon Musk launches Grokipedia, billed as neutral. Critics say it's a conservative rewrite of reality. And a new study asks, is one steady walk better than scattered steps? The answer could change your daily routine. All that and more today. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is Filtered, your daily dive into the top business, technology, and culture stories of the day, filtered through the lens of communication skills and personal development. Let's start off, as we always do, with a market recap on yesterday's vitals. S&P 500 closed at 6,875.16. That's up a whopping 1.23%. NASDAQ Composite closed at 23,637.46, also up a whopping 1.86%. Always keep in mind the long term. Over the last 25 years, the S&P 500 has gone up on average 7.47% per year. Doesn't mean it did it every year. It's an average, folks. The NASDAQ 100 up 9.73%, almost 10% a year on average for the last 10 years. Okay, let's dive into the top stories of the day right now. Amazon's record cuts and what it means for jobs. According to CNBC, Amazon will announce the largest corporate layoffs in its history starting Tuesday, with plans reported as high as 30,000 positions. The cuts would span much of the company and follow earlier reductions since 2022 that already eliminated more than 27,000 jobs. Amazon hasn't commented yet, but reports indicating the move is part of CEO Andy Jassy's efforts to streamline layers of management and shift work toward artificial intelligence. In a June memo, Jassy told employees the company will need fewer people doing some of the jobs that are being done today and more people doing other types of jobs. Well, we'll see about the more people bit. The broader picture, big tech has been cutting tens of thousands of roles across Microsoft, Meta, Google, Salesforce, and Intel as they invest heavily in AI and efficiency. That's why the next wave of job growth is likely to come from small businesses and entrepreneurs, where new products, services, and local hirings aren't constrained by legacy headcount targets or Wall Street expectations. Okay, so what's the real message here? If you think you can have a cushy, surefire coast to upper middle class wealth in America by majoring in computer science and then getting a job with a big tech company, guess what? You're wrong. That path is being shut down. The big tech companies are firing people. Here's my recommendation to anyone majoring in computer science. You need to also get a minor in entrepreneurialism. You need to know how to sell your services, whether it's hour by hour, week by week, or month by month, because you might not ever get a full-time job. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Let me go behind the scenes a moment and sort of tell you how some news shows are put to bed for final format and biases in the media. I just displayed a certain bias for you right now, but I'm going to be transparent with you. I used the headline grabber that Amazon is going to cut 30,000 jobs. Now, I read about 5 stories yesterday and today, this morning, and they all had different numbers. One had 14,000, one had 15,000, one did have 30,000. I picked the larger number. Why is that? It's not because of left-wing bias, right-wing bias, corporate bias. It's a bias that anyone in the news or entertainment business has, and that is a bias towards the more interesting story. It's simply more interesting. because it's more dramatic to talk about 30,000 people losing their jobs than it is 15,000. So I want to be transparent with you on that. Let's look at some more of the numbers. Amazon has already cut a bunch of people in recent years. They've cut 27,000 jobs since 2022. Microsoft has laid off 15,000 employees in May to July of 2025. Meta cut 600 jobs in their AI unit just earlier in the last week. Google has cut 100 design user experience jobs. Salesforce has reduced 4,000 customer support roles. Well, that's hardly surprising. I mean, trying to get a hold of customer support for any big tech company is often a fool's errand. Intel has job cuts of 35,000 and over the last 2 years, 20,000 in just recent months. So add it all up in the tech industry. And when we say tech industry, we're really talking about industry in America, because when you look at the impact on not just the S&P 500, not just American stock exchange, but the whole worldwide stock exchange, it's so heavily dominated by 7 to 10 companies, tech companies, for the most part. So they've eliminated more than 250,000 jobs since 2023, 98,000 in 2025. So what's the answer? I'll give you sort of the macro political answer if you want to change this. It's never been easier for companies to fire employees. Didn't used to be that case in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the era when some people say, let's go back to when America was great. The reason it was better for a lot of people, the reason there was a thriving middle class, is because there were unions. And I don't mean just unions for government workers and teachers like today. I mean real unions for private sector jobs. And they made it much more difficult to fire people. If you want unions, you're going to have to vote like that. You're going to have to vote for political parties that support unions. And that means sometimes disregarding a certain ad about, oh my God, your daughter's going to have to go to a swim meet and compete against a transsexual. It means you might have to ignore stuff that has absolutely no impact on your life and vote in ways that do affect your pocketbook. Because the entire workforce was the private sector workforce was heavily, heavily unionized in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and there's basically nothing left. So employers have all the power, and they're not going to give it up. And the party in power is not going to force them to. So that's the macro political level solution, societal solution. Now, let me talk about you and me, because let's face it, we can't change politics necessarily overnight. We can't get rid of politicians we don't like. And we can't force the CEOs of Amazon and Meta and Google, Alphabet, to just all of a sudden start hiring us or our kids or our grandkids. We can't do that. So what is the solution? A part of it is, I think people are going to have to be much more ambitious and aggressive about going after jobs in small companies, taking risks in startups, going to work for that small, scrappy company that could become maybe not the next Google, because Google has laid down so much pipe to sort of prevent competition, but the next small company that could at least become a medium-sized company. Maybe they don't have benefits now. Maybe they don't have a nice office. Maybe your friends and family aren't impressed, but you've got a job. So that's one part. Young people starting out their career can't simply say, I'm going to work for Google or Meta, or I'm going to stay at home and play video games with my parents in the basement. That attitude has got to go away. The next attitude is subtler, I think ultimately more important for more people, which is, I think you've got to get away from this idea of I deserve a job to I want to use my talents in a way where I make money to support my life and I help other people. It's a hugely different mindset. What do I mean by that? I mean, not just 55-year-olds who have retired and decided to be a consultant and take a few gigs here and there. I mean, you're 22 years old. You've just graduated from a state college in computer science and you can't get a job. You need to hang out your shingle right now and start selling your services as a computer software consultant. And maybe you work for a few nonprofits by the hour. Maybe you have some monthly projects with a local library. Maybe you're able to get part-time work with a bigger company, a local utility. Aggressively go out and market your services. I promise you, nothing bad can happen from it. This idea that I paid my dues and I graduated from college and I have a degree that everyone said is going to give me a job. So now I get to type, send resume, send resume, send resume, and wait for the phone to call and someone to hire me and say, show up, here's your first month's salary. I'm sorry. It's not a right. And it's not really going to happen nearly as often in the future. So that's why I'm on your side trying to help you. And you could be a mid-level career professional and you've worked for 20 years at Facebook or Google. Your job's gone. It's not going to be as simple as just getting another job the way it was perhaps 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Look, we live in a world that is increasingly dog eat dog. We live in a world where our whole political culture is about being tough on people, no compassion. I don't think that's a good sign, but that is the culture we live in, and I want to help prepare you. So my number one piece of advice to anyone in college, or for that matter, anyone looking for a job or has a job and might need to look for a job is this: start thinking of yourself as the CEO of a corporation, and that's you. It's a manpower company or a woman power company, however you want to think of it. And you're the CEO of that company, and it's your job to figure out how to monetize your company's assets, which means your time, your expertise, your value. And maybe a part of it is job hunting, sending out resumes 6 hours a day. But the other 6 hours a day when you're not sleeping, eating, and exercising, the other 6 hours of the day, you need to be out hustling, looking for work, contracts, consulting fees, fee for service. There's a lot of different ways of talking about it. And yes, I'm well aware that the gig economy isn't great for most people. I'm well aware of that. You know what else isn't great for most people? Being unemployed and having zero income, especially when the government is shut down. So I'm not telling you this is a perfect solution or a perfect answer, but it is going to be the best for you if you have that mentality. Now, I've lived this. I was someone who, frankly, didn't really fit into big corporate cultures or big government structures. So I sort of hung out my shingle in the last century. And I won't kid you, it was rough going. When I really, really got serious about running my own business and thinking of myself as an entrepreneur, someone with a small business, I only made $10,000 the first year, and that was working 18 hours a day. But you know what? It then went up another comma, another zero, and a times two the next year. It did pay off. I got over that hump, and I've done pretty well ever since. I'm not Elon Musk, but I've done pretty well ever since. Now, did I have certain advantages that a lot of people don't have? Absolutely. But I'm trying to give you every advantage I can. And right now, big corporations have all the advantages. They've got the power and they have the incentive to not hire you. They're spending collectively trillions of dollars on artificial intelligence. Why are they doing that? They're doing it to reduce cost. How do you reduce cost? You fire people. Is that nice or sweet or warm and cuddly or moral or ethical? I'll let other people weigh in on that. But I'm here to tell you it is reality. It is why they're investing in artificial intelligence. And it's why you have to be extraordinarily proactive. It's why the mentality of, oh, I'm a nerd, I'm going to sit here in my computer lab and just learn stuff and not talk to anyone and have headphones all the time is going to be a surefire way to unemployment and irrelevance. Whereas 20 years ago, 15 years, even 5 years ago, that was a surefire way to a high-paying job, especially if you had a computer science degree from a respectable school. It's not going to work anymore. So I beg you, I urge you, stop turning down your nose at gig work. There's a difference between gig work where you're making $600 a month versus gig work where you're making $6,000 a month or $60,000 a month. Not saying it's easy. Oh, but TJ, what about benefits? I need benefits. Benefits are just a function of money. If you are productive enough and charge enough in your own gig work, you now have a real business. You can give yourself any benefits you want. And of course, the number one benefit is not being beholden to any one company who can fire you anytime they want. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm glad you're here with me today. I am live. It is October 28th, the week of Halloween here in the United States, celebrating at my house. Last night, I watched Halloween, a movie I don't think I've seen since it came out in 1978. My daughter had never seen it. My wife had never seen it, and it was scary. There was some jumping and shrieking in the house. I'm hoping you're having a great week. Let's dive right into issue 2. Can robots fix elder care or just add chores? According to the BBC, British firms are racing to build robots that can help older adults with daily life, from cleaning to leading exercise classes. Shadow Robots' Rich Walker, and no relation, insist we're not trying to build Terminator, adding they want machines that make your life better. But field tests have been mixed so far. Researcher James Wright, who observed robots like Hug, Pero, and Pepper in a Japanese care home, found staff spent precious time cleaning and recharging the robots and troubleshooting when they went wrong. The broader context matters, though. In the US, the need for human caregivers is exploding. A whole bunch of old people like me and people a little bit older than I am are really needing this stuff. Home health and personal care aides are already among the largest occupations, while coal mining now employs a tiny fraction by comparison. We're talking about like 4 million home health care workers to maybe 40,000 coal miners. And yet it doesn't get talked about as much. And the remaining openings in healthcare are huge. Robots may help with lifting, reminders, or social engagement, but they won't close a labor gap overnight. That's why the real job growth will come from small agencies and entrepreneurs deploying tech that amplifies rather than replaces human care. Maybe. Okay, what's the real message here? Robots are coming for you, not necessarily to kill you, not necessarily to take your job, or at least a job you want. They're coming to take care of grandma and grandpa, to feed them and clothe them and talk to them. And that is maybe not perfect, but it's a lot better than neglect. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this story. So, anytime someone's dealing with an AI technology, their staffers, their communications officials, their lawyers are always saying, hey, be careful what you're saying. We don't want to scare people and make them think we're going to put everyone out of work and we're going to have, 99% unemployment and people roaming the streets, starving to death. So always say this isn't going to reduce jobs. And it's just frankly not true. Everyone who has a tech company at some level is trying to replace a human being, not because they don't like human beings, but that is the nature of any technology. If I have a hammer, I can get the nail in much faster than if I have to go look for a rock and bang it awkwardly. That is the nature of technology. So let's look at some actual numbers. I mentioned about 4 million. There are 4,347,700 home healthcare workers and personal care aides in the United States in 2024. It's one of the largest occupations around. Meanwhile, coal mining jobs, 40,000. So, I mean, that's just an irrelevant number compared to home healthcare workers, and yet they don't get talked about as much. They're not seen as the great hero that everyone needs to protect. In England, there are 131,000 open jobs right now for home healthcare workers. Because here's the big issue. We all love to say we love grandma, grandpa, our sisters, older brothers, family members who have needs and can't just take care of themselves. And yet nobody really wants to pay high wages, high benefits to home healthcare workers unless they're fabulously wealthy. Because most people can't afford it. I mean, if you have a parent or grandparent who needs a full-time healthcare worker, and you are a median incomed American family making $85,000 a year, you got a couple of kids, you got a mortgage, you got car payments. You're lucky if you have an extra $500 a month. So how are you going to pay for grandma or grandpa's home healthcare worker? So one of the solutions is if these robots can be created, even if they are $20,000, to buy it or rent it, the monthly fee is going to be a tiny, tiny fraction of what it would cost for a real human being. So that's the promise. The other thing is, yes, there's dignity in all work. And when you help someone in need, it does give a lot of people joy to really feel like you're there for someone, helping them in need, being nurturing. Some people do, in fact, enjoy being home healthcare workers. But let's get real here. For a lot of people, it's the only job they can get. A lot of this is in the underground economy. A lot of this is where immigrants who maybe don't have all their paperwork end up. And it's not glamorous work. Cleaning bedpans, giving people baths is not what most people aspire to. And if you do, you're a better person than I am. And you're a good person if that is what you aspire to and you enjoy it. But I don't think I'm making a huge stretch here when I say there's always going to be more jobs in the healthcare worker, the personal care industry than there are people who really, really want to be in it. And when you have the pay being relatively low, it is a prescription for unmet needs and for a lot of vacancies. Are the robots there yet? It doesn't seem to be there yet because this recent study that the BBC just focused on showed where people still have to clean the robots. They've got to spend time charging them. There's maintenance. At this stage, it's not reducing that much time it takes for helping someone. But the very nature of technology, of robots, of computers, of anything AI related is it gets better and better and better every single day, faster and faster. And now apparently they have mastered the creation of working fingers and opposable thumbs for some of these robots that serve as AI caregivers. That's a huge breakthrough. Now, I haven't experimented with one yet. I may be doing so relatively soon for a member of my own family. If so, I will report to you and let you know how it goes. What do you think? Would you let a home healthcare worker come to work for you or a family member if they were a robot? It's easy to get high and mighty. Oh, I wouldn't want a robot. How depersonalized. But do you have the time to give 24/7 care to a family member, a loved one? Do you want to do that? And do you have the resources to pay real human beings good wages? If not, these robots may very well fill the gap. I'm going to be reporting on that and sharing information that I find when I see it, because it's going to transform the world. And not just home healthcare workers. Robots are going to be doing, well, some experts would say everything, even what I'm doing right now. I hope to be ready for that because I already have my own clone, which you've heard me talk about. More in just a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and it's trainable. Welcome back to Filtered. Your $2,000 refrigerator now shows ads. According to Tech Radar, Samsung has begun rolling out a U.S. software update that puts advertising on the screens of its Family Hub smart refrigerators. The ads appear inside a new day-to-day information widget alongside news, calendars, and weather. Samsung says the screens will serve contextual or non-personal ads and that they are not collecting personal information or tracking consumers. If you understand that, you're smarter than I am. We'll dive into that more in no moment. The company has framed the move as enhancing everyday value for our home appliance customers. But early reaction has been, well, chilly. The update arrives as a notification asking users to opt in. Owners can later turn off ads in the fridge's settings under an advertisements tab or dismiss them on the cover screen. Family Hub models typically cost around $2,000, which is why critics question adding an ad channel after purchase. As The Verge first spotted, this is part of a broader trend of ads creeping into devices, from tablets to cars, raising a simple question: what exactly are we buying when hardware becomes a billboard? Okay, what's the real message here? Advertisements are coming for your refrigerator. You get up from the TV watching ads. You get out of your chair from staring at your cell phone from ads. You go to your fridge to get a glass of milk, and there's going to be an ad right there. And make no bones about it, it's coming to all fridges, because once one refrigerator company does it and they start getting a taste of that monthly recurring revenue from advertisers, everyone else is going to want a piece of the pie. Okay, let's dig a little bit deeper here. Now, let me not be a hypocrite. I have ads. I make money from ads. You're seeing ads on this show. If you're listening to this on a podcast, ads are inserted. It's part of the deal. I don't charge you for my podcast or my YouTube content or TikTok content. And in exchange for me giving this to you, you're giving me your eyeballs or ears or both to listen to an ad. And advertisers give me some percentage of that. Now, that's the way it's worked with radio and television for going on 100 years. Nothing completely surprising there. What is different is when you spend a lot of money for an appliance. And the manufacturers say, it's not really enough money. We want money regularly. How can we make more money off of you? Now it's happening to televisions. Full disclosure, I do media training with the CEOs of some major television companies. And they told me point blank that, hey, we can't make enough money just selling the hardware. The actual machine, the price goes down, down, down. But where we can make money is by selling the data to advertisers to put the right ad in front of the right customer at the right time. We can get ongoing revenue from every TV set we sell. Now, if it's one thing the modern stock market has shown us is investors really, really give priority to companies that have recurring revenue. Google, YouTube, Apple. What's the beauty of Apple? They get money every single month from subscriptions. I'm staring at my Apple phone right here. I can't even tell you how many subscriptions they're making. I sell my tjwalker.ai app through the App Store. They get a piece of every single sale. So I understand why companies do this. And why, by the way, Samsung has TVs. I have a Samsung TV, in fact, and they have ads that show up right on their own channels too. So every tech company is looking to make every single penny from every single source, and ads are a part of that. Now, before I just say all of this is always bad and surveillance capitalism is always bad, and make no mistake about it, it often is. The refrigerator to me does seem like a place where there might be really useful ads if I know we're about to run out, or if I don't know we're about to run out of milk, but my smart refrigerator does, and the ad says, hey, TJ, why don't you go to Publix later today and buy this favorite brand of low-fat milk that your family likes? I might actually appreciate that. So I don't want to say that this is somehow uh, uniformly an awful thing. But I do think we as consumers need to be aware of this. Every tech company says, "Oh, we got permission," and they give you this long consent form that's 150,000 words long that nobody has ever read. And if you don't opt out, boom, all of a sudden you're going to start getting all of this content that you didn't really want or ask for. Good luck ever figuring out how to opt out. Now, some more facts. The Family Hub fridge starts around $2,000. And that to me sounds like a pricey fridge anyway. It seems like you should get all the goodies for free. I don't think we're yet at the point where the refrigerators are going to sell you subscription services so you can watch short form entertaining video for 30 seconds when you're standing in front of the refrigerator trying to figure out what you want for a late night snack. Although, having said it right now, might put an idea in somebody's head. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if you saw that. So privacy. Samsung says the ads are contextual, non-personal, and not tracking users. I don't know if I really know what that means. I mean, I assume that means they're not saying, hey, TJ Walker at such and such address likes this kind of caviar. Start sending him direct mail that gives coupons to caviar. I'm assuming they mean they wouldn't do that. But does it mean that it's scanning my refrigerator? And so we don't know whose refrigerator this is, but we can see they normally have, 6 cans of beer, 12 cans of beer. They're down to 2. So are we going to send an ad to this fridge saying, you better go buy beer? I don't know. Would that happen? Would it be seen as a good or bad thing? Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. If you're watching this live, and we do go live every single day, typically around 9 a.m. Eastern time here in the United States, Monday through Friday. On the weekends, it's more like 11 to 12 on weekend mornings. But if you are in joining us live, whether on the podcast or any social media platform. You can always post your comments. Simon says, these pretzels are making you thirsty. Okay. That might be a good ad for the refrige. And Keem says, on the fridge, exclamation point. Yeah, it is coming. Would you buy, here's my question to you. Would you buy a refrigerator that has ads built in? I mean, seeing the weather right there, you got a second. I don't know that that would bother me. If it threw up my schedule, if I wanted it to, it is a place where you're going and looking for a couple of seconds. I personally am frankly looking for more opportunities in life to not have any screen to look at. That's why, as part of my own personal development program, it's actively spending some time each day where there are no screens. Either going for a walk for an hour a day, leaving the cell phone at home, go, as I did yesterday, a bike ride for an hour, not even taking the cell phone. Because I'm a big believer that that is ultimately what's going to make you think more clearly, have more original thoughts, be more grounded, be less nervous, not getting this bombardment of news, information, texts, things like that. I appreciate you listening or watching me now, but please make sure you spend some time getting away from screens, whether that screen is on your TV, your cell phone, your iPad, or even your refrigerator. More in a moment. Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. This is the story, if you're new here. This is the show where we look at top stories in the business world, economic world, technology world, and culture, and then filter it through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. We did get a few more comments coming in on that last issue of ads being in the refrigerator. Hacky says, I wouldn't mind if I'm getting a piece of the cake. Okay. Now, can you actually make money by buying things or discounts from buying things where the ads show on your refrigerator? If it could somehow benefit consumers, maybe it's not a bad idea. We'll be monitoring. I am going to be buying another refrigerator probably in the next couple of months. I'll let you know if my family and I decide to go with one of these that puts ads and how it makes us feel. Okay, let's get right into the next story. Grokipedia engineering neutrality with a conservative tilt. Elon Musk has launched Grokipedia, an AI-written encyclopedia he promotes as a fairer alternative to Wikipedia. The early signals point elsewhere. The site is smaller, less transparent about how entries are produced, and its framing leans to the right. Reviewers found basic problems on day one, including factual mistakes and text lifted from Wikipedia, plus a brief outage at lunch. Musk says his aim is to purge propaganda. The effect looks more like a new pipeline to inject conservative framing into what many people will treat as reference truth. Wikipedia's model is slow, public, and citation driven. It reflects the balance of evidence, even when that evidence offends a political tribe. Consider January 6, 2021. Courts rejected many lawsuits claiming widespread fraud in the 2020 election, and the public record reflects that outcome. Grokipedia's treatment downplays Donald Trump's responsibility. That is not neutral reporting. It is editorial curation that mirrors Musk's own narratives, packaged as an encyclopedia and aimed at mainstream reality. Okay. What's the real message here? If you think Grokipedia is going to give unbiased, fair information about the world compared to Wikipedia, then you probably really did buy into the line that Fox News was fair and balanced from day one. Let's go a little deeper here. Now, Elon Musk, yes, he's a brilliant business person and entrepreneur. He's had many, many successes, but he's really gone off the deep end when it comes to his own political philosophies in the last just half a dozen years. I mean, many people forget this was a guy who was, by most accounts, a mainstream centrist, voted for Barack Obama, endorsed Wikipedia, is on record as having said many, many positive things about Wikipedia, and somehow just went off the deep end in the last handful of years. And he is increasingly buying into the mentality of the most extreme right-wing thought leaders in America and around the world. And look, he's a rich guy. He can buy and build any kind of social media outlet. He bought Twitter, changed it to X, which is still a stupid name. He created this Grokipedia. And I guess if he wants to, he can write it so that there is no constitutional limit. If someone says, does the Constitution prevent someone from serving more than two terms? I guess he could say, if he wants to, well, that's in contention. And there are those who say that Donald Trump deserves a third or a fourth or a fifth term to serve for life. He can say that if he wants to. It's his thing. But my friends, we do live in troublesome times, not because there are differing opinions, not because there is a left and a right, there always has been, not because there are extremists in any one political party, because there have always been extremists in any political party. That's not the problem. The problem is democracy itself is premised on the idea of there being something known as objective reality, objective facts. It's premised on the idea that there could be journalism, not that there can't be opinion journalism, but if the average citizen of a city, a state, a country does a good faith effort to try to analyze information about what's going on, policies, what public officials are doing, they will get more or less an accurate sense of reality so they can cast votes accordingly. That's the premise of democracy. And we don't live in that world anymore, unfortunately. And I think this Grokipedia is another sign of troubling times where people say, if I hear something that offends my own policy preferences, if I hear something that makes anybody on my team look bad, I'm not going to debate the facts. I'm simply going to say your facts are wrong and I have alternative facts. And my facts, what do you know? They say I'm right every single time. Look, does Wikipedia deserve some competition? I don't have a problem with that. What I would recommend to you and to myself, use multiple sources and use sources where the person founding it isn't obviously grinding an axe. Elon Musk, whether you love him or hate him, is firmly aligned with MAGA culture, far right-wing political culture in America, South Africa, and elsewhere. And that's his right. But don't simply take information. If nothing else, look at what Wikipedia says about an entry. Look at Grok. Look at other sources. Look at news sources. Then you can make up your own mind. I hate to tell you, you're not making up your own mind if you seek out, and whether it's a news source or information source, an encyclopedic source, you're not making up your own mind if you stay in a bubble and you're only getting information from someone telling you that every one of your instincts is right, every one you don't like is wrong. You're not doing your own research. You're just committing confirmation bias again and again and again. More in a moment, bigger issues to come. Stay tuned. Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, competently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level. Thanks for joining me today. My name is TJ Walker, and I want to extend a special invitation to so many of our new viewers today. We have a lot of new viewers joining us today on Twitter, on Twitch, on X, as well as YouTube. So if this is your first time, thanks so much for joining us. I do really appreciate it. Let's hop right into our last big issue of the day. We typically cover 5 issues of the day. One long walk beats scattered steps. According to the Times, a new analysis in the Annals of Internal Medicine finds that how you take your steps matters, not just how many you take. Among people averaging fewer than 8,000 steps a day, those who regularly walked for longer than 15 minutes at a time had far better outcomes than those who took short 5-minute or less bursts. Over roughly a decade, the longer walk group was about 80% less likely to die from any cause and nearly 70% less likely to develop cardiovascular disease. Lead author Borja del Pozo Cruz put it simply: it seems like it's much better to accumulate steps in longer periods. Outside experts caution it's correlation, not proof, but says the physiology tracks. Your heart and metabolism need sustained time to reap the benefits. Epidemiologist Hannah Aram adds the practical takeaway: start where you are, then lengthen one bout a bit at a time. Some is better than none. More is better than some. Okay, so what's the real message here? Walking is the magic button for a lot of people. You don't need fancy memberships. You don't have to go to a gym and have the latest workout tools or the latest workout sexy instructor. Walk more. And it turns out longer walks are better than short walks, even if it adds up to the same number of steps. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. I do want to stress, obviously, there's a lot of misinformation about health and wellness and fitness hacks. And I don't want to be guilty of that. I mentioned it in the newsread, but this could simply be correlation and not causation. It may be that many people who don't go on longer walks don't do it because they have a pre-existing health problem. They're already weak. They already have lung capacity problems. So it may be that walking longer doesn't necessarily make you live longer, but there's a correlation. And at some point, as a rational human being, you can't simply wait for a true test that proves causation in every single thing. For me, this is a no-brainer for other reasons. When I go for a longer walk, it allows my brain to decompress even more. It allows me to think my own thoughts, to develop my own creative thoughts. I can tell you just personally, probably the best thing that ever happened to me financially was a decision I made almost 10 years ago to go on an hour-long walk every day, and I would carry a notepad just like this and a pen. And I did not carry a phone. In that long walk, it allowed me to think, reflect, de-stress, and think of creative ideas of what I wanted. I mean, for me, it was primarily coming up with new ideas, new elements for online courses. Those of you who don't know me well, I have about 300 online public speaking, communication skills, personal development courses. that have generated more than 12 million student enrollments around the world. So that was a big part of my success, giving myself time. If I take the phone, it's so easy to, oh, I just got a text. Oh, that's Jim. I better get back to him. Hey, I wonder whatever happened to that star of that TV show I liked in 1970. And you do a quick Google search or a Chat GPT search. Your brain becomes this little gnat, this fly flitting around when you have your cell phone. So that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love going for longer walks. It allows for deeper thought, deeper reflection. And if you do the long walk, if you don't have time or there other things pop up and you don't do all the other little walks, it's already done. Now, I find it amazing that people are doing 8,000, 7,000 steps a day because I personally try to do 15,000 steps a day, a minimum 12,000 steps. Am I telling you that's the magic number that you have to do it? Am I even going to tell you that 10,000 steps is the magic number? No, that was just a marketing gimmick from a Japanese company many decades ago. But I haven't seen any study that says, you know what, if you just sit on your rear end and look at screens and eat all day long, that's the best way to have a strong, healthy heart and live a long time. There's absolutely no research on that. So I'm a big fan of anything that gets people walking more. And I do think walking longer is a good thing just because it de-stresses you. And if you're smart enough to leave your cell phone home, it really allows you to think your own creative thoughts. A few more stats about this study. It was done on 34,000 adults in the United Kingdom. Average age 62. Not a bad age. They tracked them for 10 years with accelerometers. And this is what they found. The longer bout walkers were 80% less likely to die, 70% less likely to develop cardiovascular disease. Again, let's tease out here. It could be if all of a sudden you have a heart problem, you're obviously not going to go for long walks because you tire more easily. So it's not some guarantee, but it sure seems like a relatively easy thing to do, but you're not going to hear about it much. You're going to hear me talk about it today, maybe out of the corner of your eye. You see one story once, and then it's gone. Whereas every single day, you're going to be bombarded with advertisements to sit more. Sit and watch this game. Sit and watch this movie. I'm going to ask you to sit and watch my show, although you could listen to this on a podcast while you're walking, but you'd be breaking my rule of having a cell phone with you. So I don't want to be a hypocrite there. My point is, all day long, you and I are bombarded with messages to spend more time sitting. Sit in this luxury car. Sit in this nice new golf cart. Sit and watch this movie. And we get very little reminders. There's no ad campaign to go take a 30-minute walk. Why is that? Because no one's making any money off of it. There's plenty of ad campaigns to get you to drink little green potions and not eat healthy food. Plenty of ad campaigns to buy more and more protein powder and vitamins and supplements and get this shark cartilage. There's all sorts of ads for that when there's really no evidence it helps. Walking does help. And I certainly don't mean to discourage you from taking a whole bunch of short walks if that's the only thing that works in your particular schedule. But why don't we do this? Why don't we all try to walk longer walks and more short walks and just walk more in general? I judge my own life, a good day quite often, by the following criteria. Was I able to avoid getting in a car? To me, that brings happiness and health. So you don't have to be like me, but I would urge you strongly, see if there's any way you can spend less time sitting, whether it is short walks or long walks. Okay, let's dive into our grab bag section. What I do in this show is we typically look at the top 5 issues in the news, analyze them in detail, and try to filter it through the lens of communication skills, and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you happier, healthier, richer, more successful in your personal life and your professional life. But sometimes there's just more news stories and we got to put them in. So we put them into the grab bag section. I also take your suggestions. So if you have a suggestion, you can post it on any one of the social media platforms where you're watching this, or on any podcast platform where you're listening to this. So thank you for consuming the show wherever it is. Let's go into the first issue. The largest federal union in America, federal government union, they want to reopen the government now, argue later. The American Federation of Government Employees flipped strategy and urged Congress to pass a so-called clean bill to reopen the government now. President Everett Kelly said both parties have made their point, and it's time to end the shutdown. No half measures, no games. The pivot comes as paychecks stop and pressure mounts. Senate bills to pay workers have failed on both sides. The union's bottom line: restore pay and operations first, debate healthcare policy after. So what's the implication here? This is not good news for the Democrats. So a little history. Now, right now, the government, the current administration, the Trump administration, wants the government to continue paying its bills. And in the process, it wants to sunset a provision that would drastically, radically help people keep their health care bills, their health care insurance. So if the Democrats just approve what the Trump administration asked for, 20 million Americans are going to see their health care premiums double. Now, as a practical matter, what that means is millions of people are going to lose their health care because they just don't have the money. So the Democrats, their Democratic message is, as much as we can't stand all the other things this administration is doing that are blatantly unconstitutional, we're willing to put that aside if you just give 20 million Americans the same health care plan that you've already given them for the last handful of years and that you've been giving them right now under this administration. The Republican position is, no, that's sunsetted. We want to just keep on going, and it'll work out itself. We'll come up with a better plan for health care. Trust us, which has been the message really for more than a decade. No real alternative has surfaced from the other party. So where does this go? We're about to really see some tremendous pain here because a lot of government workers are not highly paid. And forget going 3 months, 6 months without pay. For a lot of people, you go a full month and you're not paying rent. Maybe your landlord doesn't evict you, but it's a pretty stressful situation. Now, I've been poor in my life. I've had times where I didn't even know where the rent's coming in, but I've never been poor when I had a child and family to support. I hope I never do, and I hope you don't, but that's an extraordinarily stressful situation. So the union has gone from supporting the Democratic position, which is we're only going to open the government if we can maintain the current level of health care for 20 million Americans, to now saying, look, you just got to do anything to give this guy whatever he wants. We just got to get a paycheck. I can understand it. I can relate to it. But this is eroding some of the support the Democrats have. That's a part of it. There's another factor. SNAP. WIC. This is a fancy name for food stamps. As the shutdown nears a month, core programs are on the brink. States warn SNAP may lapse for millions. WIC funding is uncertain, and heating aid may not arrive before winter. These are all programs that help poor people. Some Head Start centers already closed or ran on emergency foods. Food banks report surging demand, and families are skipping basics. Administrators say the real-time lesson is stark. When Washington stops, the first to feel it are children, seniors, and low-income households. So we're entering a phase of this government shutdown where there is real human pain. The question is, who is going to blink first? Who's going to feel the most political pain, motivating them to do that? Because let's look at some of the macro political factors here. There's this perception in America that by many people that the only people who get government aid and food stamps are basically poor Black people, poor Black women in inner cities. Ronald Reagan really pushed this idea of, the Black lady in the Cadillac and, 18 children and all the welfare she got. And it's been a trope among conservative circles ever since. The reality is quite different. Most poor people in America are white people in rural areas, if you look at the numbers. The people who are hurting often the most live in Republican districts. But they don't vote their interests. And so they are going to come up short. And now, their children didn't have the opportunity to vote. You can't blame their children. But this is going to be another piece of the puzzle to try to figure out when this government shutdown is going to end. These are big numbers. There are 42 million Americans who rely on some of these low-cost food vouchers and food programs. 42 million who might not be getting a decent meal very, very soon. Okay, so that's another thing factoring in this. The next issue that this government shutdown is affecting: air controllers unpaid delays stack up nationwide. Air traffic controller staffing has worsened as unpaid essential workers burn out. Yeah, that's right. You show up for work, high-stress job, and no one pays you. That's got to be stressful. Since October 1st, facilities report hundreds of staffing incidents. Over the weekend alone, there were more than 50. LAX, the airport in Los Angeles, briefly halted arrivals. Reagan National imposed ground delays. On Sunday, more than 6,000 U.S. flights were delayed for all reasons, with many tied to staffing. Experts warn the system remains safe, but slower. Small shortages ripple fast in a tightly scheduled network. Okay. Again, there are implications. Everybody loves to say government is bloated and is all wasteful in the abstract. But when you're in a plane flying home to see grandma or going to your dream vacation, whether it's in Colorado or Orlando, Florida, and you're circling and you're trying to land your plane, at that particular moment, you want a competent government official, an air traffic controller, running things. You don't want your pilot to just have to look around and say, well, the coast looks clear, let's land. Oops, someone else is landing at the same time. And it seems we're not that far away from this situation. Now, I'll make a few predictions. The president's always going to have safe air travel. I don't think this is going to affect Air Force One. Nor do I want anything happening to him in the airways. Let me be very clear about that. But this is no longer, the poor people aren't getting their food stamps, but who cares about that? This is now affecting middle-class people, upper middle-class people, and rich people because they fly constantly. And at some point, the air traffic controllers are going to say, look, you're not paying me. It reminds me of the old Kramerica, where Kramer, Seinfeld's neighbor, is talking about his job, and his intern wants to quit, and he's like, well, it's not a real job. Kramer at one point had a job. He showed up every day, and they said, you're fired. He's like, well, I don't really work here. You don't pay me. I'm not really working. I'm just showing up. At some point, it's no longer real. If you're an air traffic controller and you've got, let's say, a couple $1,000s in savings, and that's it. And you have a family. You have a spouse who, let's say, works part-time. You have a couple of kids. One of them's heading off to college. Yeah, you can probably get by not getting paid for a month, especially knowing I'll get the back pay. My uncle can spot me $1,000 maybe. You can get away with that for a month. But 2 months, 3 months, at some point you got to say, look, I don't really have a job. They're not saying I'm fired. They're not saying I'm laid off. But if I show up, they don't pay me. I've got to go show up at another job. I got to work construction. I got to become a telemarketer. I got to drive Uber. I have to make money to feed my family. And I, for one, cannot blame them. I don't go to work for free for other people, especially ungrateful people who tell me how lazy and useless and incompetent I am. I mean, that's really the kind of abuse federal workers receive on a regular basis. And we expect them to say, okay, we understand you hate us. You think we're bloated. You think that Elon Musk can take a chainsaw to us and nothing bad can happen. And you want me to work for free, go away from my family, go away from productive times where I could make money to feed myself. You want me to work for? No. At some point, that's going to break. And if nobody can fly in America unless they have their own, not only private plane, but private airport and private airstrip in their backyard, it's really going to shut down this economy and it's going to shut down our society. So it can't go on forever, folks, but it's going on a long, long time. Our final grab bag issue for today. President Trump touts his perfect MRI, but won't say why it was ordered. President Trump confirmed he underwent an MRI during his recent Walter Reed visit and called the results perfect, while declining to explain why doctors ordered it. His press secretary had called such scans routine, but couldn't cite the reason in this case. The White House summary noted advanced imaging without specifics. Transparency matters. Presidents routinely release clear medical rationales. Vague boasts aren't medical disclosure. They're political posturing. So, confession here, full disclosure. I've had an MRI before. Why did I have an MRI? Was it just a part of a normal medical procedure? No. This was about 30 years ago. I was jogging down the streets of Manhattan. It was 4 o'clock on a beautiful sunny Thursday afternoon. I just turned the corner off of 7th Avenue. I was on 37th Street. I'm running along my way, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, a guy smashed my skull with a lead pipe. I went down on the ground, and it was like one of those cartoon characters. I really think I saw little Tweety birds floating around my head. I hopped up, dazed, and it was, a homeless, deranged person. He wasn't mugging me. He wasn't running. He just kept on walking at a normal pace. I get up, sort of staggered. Someone comes to my rescue. A guy comes running past me and say, "Hey, you attacked that man," referring to me. He jumped on him, bangs his head in, knocks him to the ground, hog ties him with extra string he found, turns to me and says, "Are you okay, sir?" I mean, it was a great example of heroic efforts to aid a fellow New Yorker, which I appreciate. At that point, a shop owner came out, handed me a phone, said, you want to call 911. I called 911, and all of a sudden, there's sirens. Only 20 feet away, an entire giant fire truck comes out to rescue me. They realized, well, that's kind of silly. He's only 20 feet away. They walked me in to the fire station and said, "Well, tell us what happened. And by the way, what day is it?" I said, "Well, that's a stupid question. Obviously, it's," I had no idea what day it was. It was almost like a computer reset. In fact, when I did go down, I did black out. And it was apparently only like 1 second, but I blacked out. I came up, I saw the little stars around me, and then I started staggering. I said, "Well, I think I'm okay." And they said, "No, you're going to the hospital. The ambulance is on the way." The ambulance took me and I had an MRI done. So why am I telling you that? It's because MRIs are not handed out like candy by doctors. It's usually because something bad is happening, or you no longer know what day it is. And this president won't tell us anything other than he has perfect health. Okay. I guess in the scheme of things, all the other standard protocols that presidents of both parties have followed, in the scheme of things, this is a relatively minor transgression. But look, at some point, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. I give a lot of credit to Republicans and conservatives and conservative commentators for calling it out like they saw it. They were saying for years, Biden's too old. He looks like he's out of it. He doesn't look like he's 100% there. And you know what? They were right. And a lot of mainstream commentators, and certainly a lot of Democrats, stuck their head in the sand. And so we refuse to acknowledge reality. And then it was too late. And then the debate happened, the first and only real debate of 2024 between Trump and Biden. And the whole world could see this guy's out of it. This guy's about 20 years past his expiration date. So I give credit to the conservative media and a lot of other mainstream media analysts like Ezra Klein and Bill Maher. But it has to go both ways. It is increasingly obvious to a lot of Americans that forget whether you even agree with the particular policies, how words come out of the mouth of this president, the bizarre, idiotic things he says on a regular basis, suggest someone else who's past their expiration date. And we are now seeing the same type of cover-up denial that we saw a year ago in the White House. And it's a bit maddening. So I personally do not think we're ever going to see this president leave the White House while he is alive. And I'm not wishing anyone ill will, but I really don't think he would ever acknowledge any health problem. If his doctor said, you have a horrible disease, you're going to be dead in 6 weeks. The one thing I'm confident of is the very next day, the president would come out and say, I have a clean bill of health. And the president said, I'm going to live 2,000 years. That is what he would say. Okay, we are done with our grab bag section. If you have opinions on this, please feel free to post them. I would love to hear from you. If you agree with me, let me know what you agree with. If you heard something you like, let me know. If you heard something you disagree with, let me know, but tell me why. Don't just say, oh, you're an idiot, or you're too conservative, or you're too this or too that. Give me a reason why, so we can have a reasoned debate. Now, how I like to end our shows typically is helping you and being even more responsive to you. So what I try to do is answer one question from you at the end of every show that specifically relates to my core area of expertise, communication skills and personal development skills. You can always post your questions here. I also look at questions that my students post as well. So today's question comes from Brent Swap. He is a student of mine in my Leadership You Can Speak Like a Leader online course. And Brent says, how can I, as a construction project manager, communicate daily issues with greater ease and confidence so that I can better connect with my clients and colleagues and help ease tension in the workplace? Well, Brent, thanks for the question, and congratulations to you for acknowledging and realizing just because you're a construction manager doesn't mean communication isn't really important. It's important for any manager. The way you manage is by talking to people. You can't just manage by having people read your mind, which unfortunately a lot of managers think should happen. Your job is about communication. As you point out, your clients, your colleagues, people who work with you, you have to communicate regularly. So for starters, I would recommend focus on the first skill, and that is listening. You have to truly listen to your clients, your colleagues, your workers more. The problem so many managers have, and I've been guilty of this before, you're in a hurry, Someone's starting to ask you a question. You think you've heard it 10 other times. You know the answer. You just rush right to it. Don't do that. You've got to truly listen to your clients, your colleagues, your coworkers, your employees to find out what is their concern, even if you think you know what it is or you think you've heard it before. So listening is the first step. The next is asking yourself, am I truly giving them information to help them, to recognize that I've heard them, to respect them, and to help them? Or am I just saying things to make myself look smart? One thing that will help you is to look for every opportunity you can to speak more. I don't mean hog every meeting, but if you are in a meeting with others, at least ask one question. That's a type of speaking. The more you talk, the less stressful it gets, the more comfortable you'll get. Now, every once in a while, I'm not suggesting that you do this regularly, but maybe it's once a quarter, you have a meeting with your most important employees or all the employees who work with you or stakeholders or clients. And you've really got to communicate important ideas. Maybe there's a new production schedule, maybe there's new tools, there's something new. I would recommend actually rehearsing what you want to say. I don't mean you got to get a big fancy PowerPoint or put on a suit and tie if you don't normally, but I just mean rehearse it in front of your cell phone. Look at it. Ask yourself, if this weren't me, when I listen to this person, does this person make any sense? If you don't love it, keep doing it. Keep practicing it until you like what you see. So if you do that, Brent, you're going to be in a much more confident state every time you speak, and you'll be much more effective. Good luck, Brent. Thanks so much. That's our show for today. Please take a moment and like the show. Follow us if you're on any podcast platform. Subscribe if you're on a podcast platform. If you're on YouTube or TikTok or anyplace else, please subscribe there. Leave comments, give a thumbs up, and really what would help a lot is leave a positive review. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.